There are consequences for all of your actions. Everything you do has a consequence. So, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the consequences of setting boundaries and what that looks like. If you set boundaries to require people to do A, B, and C, and if you set these boundaries and they don't adhere to those boundaries, there's consequences. And sometimes those consequences affect us in the way that be a part of our life. And sometimes that simple reality is what keeps us from setting boundaries in the beginning. But at what cost are you allowing them to keep you from having a standard of quality care, of self-care and love for yourself towards you? At what cost? There's consequences to setting these boundaries, and you have to be okay with those consequences. You have to be strong enough to realize that I set this boundary for this reason, because I need to ensure that I'm being respected, to be sure that I'm being heard, to be sure that I'm being nurtured in a loving way. And if someone does not adhere to those boundaries that you set, then there's consequences for those boundaries. And it's up to you to be sure that you enforce the consequences of those boundaries that have not been honored. Don't forget why you have set boundaries from the beginning. They're there for a reason. I don't know how to have that conversation. Well, would you rather not have the conversation and keep someone in your life that you have invited in, that you are allowing to dishonor the space of you that you have set boundaries around? Think about it. So there's consequences for setting boundaries. But let's talk about the amazing positive consequences that do come out of setting these boundaries. If you set boundaries for people, you force them to respect what you need, to hear your needs, and to honor those boundaries. By setting those boundaries, the consequences of those boundary setting, the boundary setting that you've done, it provides you with a better sense of self. It demonstrates to you that you are deserving of having people respect the boundaries that you set. It shows and demonstrates to people that you respect yourself, and that if you want to engage with me, you have to respect the boundaries that I set, and you, as well as I, have to live with the consequences of you not following and honoring the boundaries that I have set for myself. I know it sounds simple, it's a simple chat here, and I know sometimes it can be really hard to set those boundaries because we don't want to cause conflict with people, we don't want to hurt people's feelings in the process, this, that, and the other. But for once, the reason why it's important to set boundaries is for yourself. It's not for anybody else. You're not doing it for anyone else but for yourself. So set boundaries. Honor those boundaries. and be okay with the consequences of boundaries that you set, of them being honored as well as not being honored. Set those boundaries and be okay with the consequences. Be okay with the seemingly bad consequence that you may have to cut someone off out of your life. You may have to confront someone and say, hey, you dishonored my boundaries. Or take it one step back rather. You may have to say, hey, these are the boundaries. This is the line. Do not cross it. If you cross it, this is what's going to happen. I know sometimes saying these are my boundaries can be the hardest part for some people. But with that comes, you have to enforce the consequences of the boundaries that you set forth for yourself. There's a reason why you have done that. There's a reason why. Put yourself first. Take everybody else out of the equation, because honestly, at the end of the day, they don't matter. It's all about you. You get to choose how people show up in your life. You get to choose how people engage with you. You have the choice to walk away from people who do not align with your core values and the boundaries that you set for yourself in order to feel comfortable and happy within the world and realm that you are currently living in.